rope, tie it back to that post at the front of the boat, and we could continue on our journey with just 1 horsepower. Now I've said we can carry up to 30 tons on Jason. Only 1 horse was needed for each boat. So remember, the critical thing about transporting heavy items on the canal being on the water is that the water takes the weight. We enter this next tunnel, it's much shorter. There is a path that was built for the horse. Just as we enter, look to the right hand side of the brickwork as we enter, you can see a white painted line and the railings there. Underneath that white painted line is a strip of iron, and that has got grooves etched into it which are rope marks. That means that the wear and tear of the rope being pulled against that strip of iron is evident at the time gone by. Imagine if we were being pulled by a horse, it would just be leaving the tunnel now up by where that orange barrier is, and when we get there we'll see those middle rope marks because the horse has turned slightly left on the towpath. That rope will be being pulled tight against the front, against the brickwork, if that's stripping on the hand side. Have a look. Just where that iron barrier is, quite deep grooves into that iron, more than 100 years of horse traffic up and down the canal. A little souvenir of bygone era. Now this little part of the canal is a spectacular example of what their original function was. This stretch is called the Lisson Wide, L-I-S-S-O-N, the Lisson Wide. And the canal was built really wide here for a couple of reasons. One, because factories and industry were set up on the side of the canal to take advantage of the transport that the canal provided. What we're looking at here is an electricity substation that converts and distributes electricity. What used to be here, originally built by the canal, was an old power station that burnt coal in furnaces to make electricity. So this area, the Lisson Wide, was built this way to accommodate 2 types of traffic: all the boats that were supplying coal to the power station to burn to make electricity, and then all the boats that were just continuing along the Regent's Canal around to the east of London and indeed to the River Thames. Incidentally, if that power station wasn't there and the block of flats behind it, you'd be able to see Lord's Cricket Ground, which is the 3rd Lord's Cricket Ground, which was moved here in 1813, just 5 minutes walk away. This Lisson Wide is now basically a narrow boat village, and these are all modern narrow boats. Some of them are barges, you can tell the wider beam ones are barges. We've all got people living in them. The space here on the left is left permanently open. That's so that you can turn your long boats round. If you lived your life on the canal, you needed to know whereabouts and how far ahead you were going to be able to turn around. Keep looking left. That dirty pink wall behind these boats, beneath the trees on the left hand side, you can see a few arches in the rendering on that wall. Now these are bricked up tunnels. We call them access tunnels. When they were tunnels, they used to give access to the boats that were full of coal right into the heart of the old power station, so that they could unload their coal in a constant stream of boats carrying the coal as near to the furnaces as possible, and then they continue. And all the waste from the burnt coal was loaded onto the now empty narrow boats, and they would all emerge from a different tunnel and take that waste from the burnt coal to other sites up and down the canal where the ash would have been used as a packing material in the making of bricks and in the making of road surfaces that they were developing through the 19th century. Also, very importantly, 2 tunnels that we see here now bricked up would have been stables for up to 200 horses. By and large, people that lived in the narrowboats didn't own their own horse, and they would just hire a horse for different legs, different stretches of the journeys that they made. So on the working boats, these people had, the family had a small cabin at the back of the boat to live in with their children. The children were working from as young as 5. This community survived just about into the 1950s. Barely able to get to school, largely unable to read and write. The times changed there for the canals. Industry was no longer the main feature. They fell into decline. This community of people, their main ways and means of making a living has all but disappeared. The green ramp on the left is where the public can rejoin the towpath. Just about make it all the way walking along the canal to Camden and beyond on the left hand side. Our 19th century built railway bridges. We can hear a train coming out of or going into Marylebone Station, the first bridge. That's the overground. And lines over. See those thousands of rivets instead of being put together all in modern welding. The advantage of getting round to the docks in the east end of London is steel and coal and textiles loaded onto ships for exports, and similarly items that come from around the world, your tea and coffee, rubber, grain, sugar, pottery, all being imported and loaded onto boats and distributed around the country by canal. I'm going to say look up on the right hand side through the bushes and trees, because this stretch of the north outer ring road of the Regent's Park on the right hand side has a line of about 7 extremely plush palatial private homes. One of them is Hanover Lodge. I think it's that first one that we can see from here. Recently sold for £120 million.
Wow.
Now, the Regent's Park itself was developed and designed and landscaped in the early 1800s on the site of old fields, even an old hunting ground. It was designed by a famous architect of the Regency period, somebody called John Nash, who also designed all those buildings in Regent Street that you might be familiar with the style of. The ones we're looking at here are 20th century built houses made to look a little bit like the Regency style buildings. The architect of these was somebody called Quinlan Terry. through the trees, the bushes on the left, you can see a rather smart building. That's a block of flats in St John's Wood. We're just past some Jenny Wren on the left. They're both very similar, an old working narrowboat, very similar to Jason's. Not quite as old, very pretty. So the Regent's Canal skirting Regent's Park. John Nash, the architect of the park on Regent Street, out to Buckingham Palace and the Bright Pavilion, who is a stakeholder in the Regent's Canal Company. He had designed it to go through Regent's Park itself at the beginning, but those plans were thrown out. People living in Regent's Park didn't want a ditch dug through their newly landscaped gardens and parks. We're just going under a bridge called Tyburn Bridge. Not much to look at, but just to be aware that above our heads, in a pipe in the brickwork, runs the Arch and Liver Tyburn. There's a glass tile on the pavement above. Or run that one above our heads, finding most of them finding their way to the River Thames. Now our canals were built by hand 200 plus years ago, mostly by Irish migrants. So that's with no modern machinery. They built over 4,000 miles. Man-made waterways, locks, tunnels, bridges, aqueducts. There's something to say about the next bridge coming up. So that's some incredible achievement of engineering. They're not, in fact, that deep, about 6 feet deep. Maybe a little bit more in the middle, and they bank to a shallower depth at either side. So Irish migrants, largely the contingency of people that dug our canals, and we call the canals the cut.